Hey guys, what's up? It's Ashlyn here. Alright, so, I'll show you this little thing I bought from Wish, of all places, guys. It is a ring light. Let me show you. Brighter. Off. Okay. So this is the ring light that I bought from Wish, and it came in. It's got this setting, it's got this setting, and it's got this setting. And it's a little clippy clip. It can go on your laptop, it can go on your computer. It doesn't really matter what it goes on, it works great. Okay. So, oh my gosh, I look wrecked, you guys. I'm so tired. You can tell my eyebrows need done. Wow. Anyway, I wanted to show you guys that, and yeah, let's get into it. Today we are here to read another chapter in the Gratitude Diaries. I apologize that the chapters are getting updated, like, very, very slow. I don't know exactly what's going on, but it's taking like 2 hours on this camera, this laptop, to upload one video. It takes 2.5 hours. But anyway, let's go ahead and get into this. Grab your drinks, grab your snacks, and let's get to reading again. We are on chapter 6, by the way, and that chapter is called Money Matters, or Maybe It Doesn't. Okay? See you guys shortly. Alright. Open your books to page 113, and we will start reading. I don't have my annotation marks. I don't know where they went. Anyway, let's get into it. Money matters, or maybe it doesn't. Grateful to get a new perspective on money. Thankful to discover how I can make myself luckier. Grateful to stop measuring myself with money and just think of its practical value. Okay. Get a little comfortable here. Okay. Oof. Excuse my stomach. I ate a really big dinner. When I told my husband that I was going to focus on money this month for my year of gratitude, his lips puckered as if he'd just bitten into a bitter lime. Talking about finances never puts you in a grateful mood, he said. That's why I'm going to work on it, I admitted. My husband uses various apps and computer programs to organize our savings and investments and expenses, and every couple of months I ask him to print out the statements so we can go over them together. It never ends well. As a general rule, I get a shocked look on my face and say, "Is that all?" "What number were you hoping for?" he asked me last time. I didn't really have one in mind, just more than that. So my new springtime resolution was to be grateful for what I had in the bank rather than what I didn't. I decided to start by getting a little perspective on money, because it turns out that how grateful we are for what we earn is all a matter of perspective. Standard economics says a dollar is a dollar, and it doesn't matter how you get it or how many of them your neighbor has. But the newer breed of behavioral economists point out that how satisfied we are with our salaries depends a lot on what those around us are making. They've done studies and surveys and found that, given a choice, most people would be happier earning $100,000 if their neighbors were taking in $75,000, than getting a raise to $110,000 if everyone else around earned $200,000. And asked to look at 3 years of salaries, most people would rather see the sum start modestly and go up every year, rather than start higher and go down. And they chose that even if the total over the 3 years was less. Apparently, when it comes to money, we may have dollars, but we don't always have cents. A couple of years ago, a 30-year-old bond trader named Sam Polk wrote an op-ed in the New York Times that many found infuriating. He explained that he had walked away from Wall Street after he got a $3.6 million bonus and was angry that it wasn't more. My guess is that 90% of Wall Street feels like they're underpaid. He explained later. He admitted that instead of seeing his salary in the context of the world as a whole, he was comparing himself only to the guy at the next trading desk. It's Pretty easy to decide that Mr. Polk was completely delusional, but behavioral economists say that we all have a similar response, those smaller bank accounts. Bond trader Polk understood there was something wrong. He decided he had a money addiction and realized that he was on a treadmill that would never make him happy. When he got off, he told one reporter that instead of setting some bizarrely high goal, my challenge is to accept with total gratitude the life I have already. I discussed this with my husband, who glibly suggested that I didn't have Polk's problem, because if I were addicted to money, I'd probably have a lot more of it. But we agreed that before we sat down to go over our finances this month, I would try to figure out what number would make me content. My theory was that I didn't need a lot to feel grateful. I just needed enough. I lost my spot. Oh my gosh. I just needed enough money so I didn't have to think about money. Trying to get a bigger view, I discovered that roughly 1/3 of the world's population lives on less than $2 a day. Most of the poverty is in sub-Saharan Africa, so any of us living in a developed country should wake up every morning grateful for the good luck of where we were born. Back when I'd written those magazine articles with actor Matt Damon, I'd become interested in his charity, Water.org, and even spent time doing a project for them. Unlike many celebs, Damon wasn't just a figurehead. He had been truly shocked when he learned that some 760 million people on the planet lacked access to clean water. Changing that became an important mission for him, and the subject of our first article together. He regularly went on late-night talk shows, from David Letterman to Jimmy Kimmel, to explain the need for toilets and running water. But he knew people would rather hear about his latest red carpet escapades. How many times can you repeat that a child dies every minute from a water-related illness? He asked me wryly. On the one hand, he knew he couldn't say it enough. On the other, he realized we don't easily relate to the deprivations of extreme poverty. Accustomed to turning on a tap, we find it hard to imagine being in the sandals of someone who has to walk miles to a well. Oof. My body hurts, guys. Oh my gosh. Looking for comparisons that were slightly easier to grasp, I discovered that economists at the United Nations International Labour Organization had taken a shot at figuring out the world's average wage and came up with $1,480 a month, or just under $18,000 a year. That's a bit more in a range we can imagine. The calculation came with endless caveats and complications and counted only people who got a salary. When the number crunchers at Gallup took a shot at finding median household incomes all over the world, they spun out numbers from a low of $673 per year in Burundi to highs of more than $50,000 a year in Norway, Sweden, and Luxembourg. The United States and the UK came in somewhere around the $40,000 mark. Putting those together, I figured that the average person living in the United States or the UK had a standard of living about twice the world's average. But as Garrison Keillor taught us in his Stories from Lake Wobegon, we all expect to be above average. And like the guys on Wall Street, instead of comparing our standard of living to the whole world and feeling grateful, we compare ourselves to the person down the street and feel slightly bummed out. Unless you're Mexican businessman Carlos Slim, frequently number one on the billionaires list, there's someone better off than you. Think how poor Bill Gates and Warren Buffett feel in the years they slipped to numbers 2 and 3. I have a delightful friend I'll call Abby, who is pretty and fun-loving with a sexy style that has always attracted men. Happily married now, she had stayed good friends with a guy she dated years ago. Through a combination of smarts, which he has, and extreme luck, that too, he had become wildly successful. He picked Abby up one day to take her to lunch, and as they sat in the backseat of his limousine, he opened the latest issue of Forbes to point out his name on the list of the 400 richest people in the world. She congratulated him, but he continued flipping the pages of the magazine, and a moment later he exploded in indignation when he noticed one of his competitors listed 20 places ahead of him. "How could that jerk possibly beat me?" he exclaimed. Since she had been his friend well before he became a master of the universe, she had a perspective on just how far he'd come. He obviously didn't. Having a global business, an adoring wife and children, and fabulous homes in various locations around the world wasn't enough. He wanted to be 20 places higher on the Forbes list. Why do we sabotage ourselves that way? It's easy to laugh at Abby's Forbes friend or be revolted by the Wall Street bond trader before his reform. But on our own, more modest levels, most of us are probably guilty of the same cutting comparisons. We feel a pain that the people next door can afford a bigger house or a fancier car or are remodeling the kitchen. You don't want a Viking stove so you can boil eggs faster, but you want it because it costs more, and darn it, you deserve it. I've happily kept my GE Cafe stove, thank you. A friend of mine says that the curse of living on the Upper East Side of Manhattan is that everyone she knows is richer than she is and eager to flaunt it. But no matter where you live, you can always find someone who has more money. A lot of people have done research into money, how we make it, how we feel about it, how it makes us feel, and some of the most interesting research I came across had been done by Paul Piss, an engagingly bright social psychologist now at the University of California, Irvine. Piff recognized how readily we overlook the advantages we've been given. In one of my favorite experiments, he invited people to play Monopoly and made it very clear that the game was rigged. One of the two players, chosen randomly, started with twice as much cash as the other, earned twice as much for passing go, and rolled 2 dice instead of 1 to move around the board twice as fast. Piff noticed that the rich players quickly took on signs of dominance, smacking their pieces. They always got the Rolls Royce, aggressively around the board and celebrating smugly each success. When asked to describe the game afterward, the winners pointed out how clever they had been to buy certain properties and earn their victory. Almost nobody attributed their success to the initial flip of a coin that got them into their position of privilege. Piff told me with a laugh when we had a long and animated conversation about his work. Even when there's no question that the world has been rigged in our favor, our instinct is to explain that we deserve what we got. Did the winning players appreciate that they had started with $2,000 instead of their opponent's $1,000? Or that they received $200 rather than $100 for pass and go? Well, sure, but that was less important to the outcome than how brilliantly they had played, or so they claimed. Piff said that our minds tend to make sense of positive experiences in terms of internal attribution. That's antithetical to gratitude, which says I'm not necessarily entitled to the good things I have, but I'm lucky to have them. An old Ray Charles song has the line, "If it wasn't for bad luck, I wouldn't have no luck at all." Funny, but also profoundly true about how most of us mistakenly feel. There's no real answer to the question, what am I worth? So we take whatever we currently have as the baseline from there. The only way to go is up, and if that doesn't happen, we bemoan our bad luck. But it never occurs to us that some of our good fortune is also at least partly luck, and we should be grateful for it. Instead of thinking it unfair when something goes wrong, shouldn't we just be grateful when something goes right? Piff created the Monopoly game for its obvious real-world parallels to so many people, from offspring of privileged families to just about anybody who has been helped along the way to wealth and doesn't want to admit it. Piff told me that he remembered watching CNN sometime after the Wall Street bailouts and hearing interviews with guys cavorting with their colleagues in bars. They all explained that they had succeeded, but because of their own business acumen and know-how, and that the bailouts had nothing to do with it. That the Treasury Department was spending up to $700 billion to save the situation that these guys had screwed up didn't seem to affect their reasoning. Wealth gives rise to an increased focus on oneself and a decreased focus on the external environment. There's a bias to construe the good things that happen in terms of what you did to deserve them, and to forget to thank the people who helped you succeed. If I'm going to be a rock star, I have to do something about my hair. But really, I think so many people watching is a testament to how resonant this issue is. He was the first to say that most wealthy people have probably done a lot to contribute to their own success. But we've all also been helped by others, even if it was just a parent who changed your diaper. A sense of gratitude changes your orientation from an internal focus to an external one, and reminds you that the world has been good to you. Back during the 2012 campaign, now Senator Elizabeth Warren said in a speech that there is nobody in this country who got rich on his own. She urged gratitude for the advantages of doing business in America. The police and fire departments that protect our factories, the highways that let us move our goods. President Obama tried to make a similar point, but his slightly mingled version, "you didn't build that," became a Republican rallying cry. Once the politicking died down and the election was over, most people would probably agree that any business person living in America started with an advantage that many around the world would be happy to share. Beating your chest and announcing, "I built that," could seem unseemly. But money remained a very touchy subject. I now mentioned my gratitude project to just about everyone I met, and the responses were almost always positive. The unlikeliest people, including a cab driver, told me that they kept gratitude journals, and most others concurred with the idea of being more grateful for family, friends, and everyday life. When I tentatively brought up money, though, gratitude didn't come into the picture. People told me how hard they worked and that they'd earned every dime. I didn't doubt it because I felt that way myself. But if we're all playing a rigged Monopoly game, shouldn't we be a little humbler and more grateful to the people, the country, and the circumstances that gave us our advantage? You could be grateful to the cosmos for all the twists your life has taken. He didn't dismiss the idea. Instead, he talked about how much of life is random. In his view, we are all surrounded by thousands of moments of chance. You have to be prepared and attentive so you can grab opportunities when they come. And then you need to work hard and apply yourself with what he referred to as focused energy. But even with all that, serendipity plays a role in any success. I ask myself regularly whether I got here by luck or skill, he said with a slightly abashed smile. Recognizing the role of luck can be uncomfortable for most of us, but Dr. Jarecki did it with great delight, rolling off story after story of the people he met by chance who helped him along the way. Randomness plays a bigger role than any of us want to admit, he said, using simple math. He explained that in much scientific research, an event is described as less likely than chance if its so-called p-value is less than 0.05. Each of us probably has 100 or 1,000 events that occur in a day or a week. So if you multiply that by 0.05, you see that the probabilities of the unexpected are very high. Those events could range from running into an old friend on a street corner, amazing that we're both here, to finding a business opportunity that made you rich. Dr. Jarecki thought his attentiveness to detail, obsessiveness actually, allowed him to see lucky possibilities that others might miss. But Pip would have been pleased that a guy who has a pilot on staff to fly his own private Falcon 7X was able to look outward as well as inward to explain his success. Thinking about the connections between luck and gratitude, I read some books and articles by Richard Wiseman, a professor at the University of Hertfordshire, who holds a chair in the study of the public understanding of psychology, the only such chair in Britain, if not the world. He's also a magician, suggesting that it takes some wizardry to help the public understand psychology. Wiseman became fascinated by what makes people lucky or unlucky, and he eventually decided he could help people change. Part of luck, as Dr. Jarecki suggested, was simply paying attention to your surroundings. Another part was believing you're lucky so that you're open to good things happening. In one experiment, Wiseman asked volunteers to look through a newspaper and count the photographs. The people who had described themselves as unlucky flipped carefully through every page, counting. The lucky ones finished in seconds, because they noticed the big ad on page 2 that said, "Stop counting, there are 43 photographs." Lucky people also noticed the ad in another experiment that said, "Tell the experimenter you have seen this and win 250 pounds, which the unlucky missed. We're likely to be grateful when good scenarios occur, but maybe we can also make them happen. Imagine, for example, that you're out of work and headed to a coffee shop to get advice from a former colleague. As you arrive, you notice a $20 bill on the ground, and since there's no way to identify the owner, you happily tuck it in your wallet. Well, that's nice. You start to feel a little lucky. Your friend hasn't arrived, so you sit down alone and chat with the man at the next table who is also alone. He laughs at your stories about searching for a job and ultimately gives you his card and says to call if he can ever help. Turns out he is an executive at a company where you love to work. You wait for your friend a little longer, then leave happy that the world is on your side. You'll call him tomorrow. The same day could happen a different way. Anxious to meet your contact, you rush into the coffee shop and never see the $20 bill. You're too tense to talk to your neighbor, so never know that your dream job is just a hello away. When the person you were to meet doesn't show up, you slink away, embarrassed and dispirited. How can you be grateful to the world when good things never happen? And I'm actually going to stop there because my throat, as you guys can tell, is actually really starting to hurt. There is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 more pages of the chapter, and I'm going to go ahead and let you guys read that, and I will revisit with you. I want to say, let's have you guys read chapter 7 by yourself, and chapter 8 by yourself. And we will regroup at part 3, which would be chapter 9 for summer, gratitude and health. Okay? You guys have a great night. Sorry I had to cut it short. Bye.